dude.
Yeah, really.
I had him the year he broke the record. He was on my fantasy team.
Nice.
10,
Okay.
9,
Oh, shit.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to Season 9, Episode 3 of HTF Bets. And let me tell you, we have a stacked show today. Starting off with Andrew's fantasy football ad drops from Week 2, and I put up 165 points on Noah Kemper. Then we'll preview the UEFA Champions League and make some predictions. And then, as always, we'll finish off with our surefire pick of the week. And during our intro, I'll let you think about why I'm wearing this fancy schmancy jacket. Don't go anywhere because HTF Bets starts right now. And welcome back. Joining me at the desk, as always, is Tyler Brown to my right, and then Kathleen Moore to my left. We also have Andrew Gregg, but we'll see him in a second. How are you doing, Kathleen?
Oh, I'm doing really well. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. So this segment is Andrew's fantasy football ad drops. So Andrew, how are you doing? And let's get right into it.
Yeah, so I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk some fantasy football. If I could just go straight into it, I have to my side here my ads and drops of the week, and I'd like to give a special shout out to Baker Mayfield, Quentin Johnson, and Hunter Henry as my ads for this week. And then, unfortunately, for my drops, I have Deontay Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins.
Okay. All right. Well, Baker Mayfield, I think, is justified. You know, the Bucs have been going crazy. They're 2-0. He had 4 touchdowns week 1, passing touchdowns, that is. And just Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans, and Rachaad White, they're a great tandem. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I honestly just hope we don't see Baker Mayfield morph back into the Baker Mayfield that we've all seen throughout his career, because he can be pretty disappointing at times.
Yeah. Andrew, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so Baker Mayfield is on my list this week for a lot of different reasons, and just between the fact that he has so many different receiving weapons between Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, the receiver that they drafted out of Washington, McMillan, he's been awesome this season. So they have a lot of different receiving options. He also is sneaky athletic, if you want to put it that way. He can get out of the pocket. He had 34 rushing yards last game and then 21 rushing yards the game before. So if you are someone who needs a quarterback for whatever reason, if you have a quarterback injury between two unfortunately getting injured, or just your quarterback isn't performing the way you'd want him to, I think that Baker Mayfield being the quarterback 2 on the season so far is a good sign for fantasy owners, and the fact that he has so much weapons around him. And also his offensive line is really protecting him this season. He hasn't taken that many sacks, so he's just been on a roll this season, QB2, as I mentioned. So I think that if you need a quarterback and you're struggling to look for one, Baker Mayfield is definitely your guy.
Definitely can't disagree with that. However, your second ad is quite the interesting name, Quentin Johnson. Before you get into that, Andrew, Tyler, why would people add him?
Quentin Johnson, his rookie year wasn't as great as we all thought, right? He came out of TCU as a first-round draft pick. Really thought he'd be great in the contested catch area. That was his specialty. He'd be a bit of a Mike Williams replacement now that he's gone. And he finally had a bit of a breakout game against the Panthers. Though I am hesitant to say that you should add him and he could be a flex starter on your leagues. This is the Panthers we're talking about. This is one of the worst teams in the NFL. All right, the worst, one of the worst we've seen in recent years. So I have a bit of caution when looking at Quentin Johnston.
Okay, so Andrew, why would you rebuttal Tyler?
So I think that Quentin Johnson gets a lot of hate because his name is Quentin Johnson at this point. At TCU, he's one of the best players on that team, and he led them to the college football playoff. I think that he's still a great player, and although he had some drops last year, I don't know. I think that he's over it this year. He's had 11 targets and had 8 catches this season. So just one of the better wide receivers. I think he's the wide receiver 15, depending on if it's PPR or a non-PPR league. But still, he's been one of the best players, I guess one of the best wide receivers this year. And the fact that his name is Quentin Johnson is not helping him out.
Yeah. So then your third ad is a tight end. Who is that, Andrew?
Yeah, so Hunter Henry, he was supposed to be a big part of the offense last year, and he wasn't so much last year, but this year he's one of the better tight ends in fantasy especially. He had specific plays drawn up for him. He had a tight end screen, which isn't the most common thing if your name isn't Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce. So he had plays drawn up for him last game, and he also had 12 targets on 8 catches for 109 yards, if I'm not mistaken. So just one of the better tight ends, it looks like, this year. And tight end is a position where there's not a lot of depth to it. If you can get your tight end to score maybe 10 points a game, like 10 points a fantasy week, that's probably one of the better tight ends in the league. So if he can consistently just put up 8 to 12 points, he should be a starter in like a maybe 10 or 12 man league.
Okay, and so now we're going to go into some of your drops. Who's that first one?
Yeah, so I have Deontay Johnson as my first drop, and unfortunately he is rostered in 84% of leagues. He was drafted in like the maybe late 8, like early 9th round, and I don't know, it's a fire sale on everything Carolina Panthers. They have one of the worst offenses in the league. Bryce Young looks like he's crying mid-game. It's one of the worst offenses like in possibly NFL history, and there's just nothing working for them. So he's only had 3 catches through 2 games, and he's just clearly like somebody that should not be rostered in at least 84% of leagues.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't disagree with any of your picks so far, but what is your last pick? Who's the second drop?
So my second drop is DeAndre Hopkins. I think a lot of people drafted the ghost of DeAndre Hopkins. He was one of the best players in the league for a very long time on the Texans and even on the Cardinals, but this year he's just not that guy. He plays on a Titans offense that is kind of lackluster, to say the least, and he's just not getting any targets. He's had 3 targets through 2 games with 2 catches, so just not somebody that you'd want in a lot of your leagues, and probably get somebody on the waiver wire with a lot of higher upside than somebody who's probably not going to get targeted for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Calvin Ridley, they brought him in. He's clearly the wide receiver 1 in Tennessee, and they're just more of a running offense anyway with Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard. I know some Tony Pollard fantasy owners have been loving that. I do know that you have him.
It has been great to be a Tony Pollard owner, but Hopkins, I do agree with your take there on Hopkins, Andrew. And I don't know so much if it's Hopkins' fault. You know, there isn't a legend that goes to the Titans that doesn't look washed in their jersey. I won't lie, but Will Levis has been struggling to start this year, and that has been greatly affecting Hopkins' production.
Yeah, completely agree. And then just jumping back to the other drop is Deontay Johnson. I don't know why people would really have any Panthers rostered, but he's still rostered in 83% of leagues like Andrew mentioned. Now, Kathleen, you're from North Carolina.
Yeah, it's a tough life being a Panthers fan, but honestly, if you have any Panthers on your roster at this point, you're kind of cooked. Deontay Johnson, he had a really solid year with the Steelers, but it seems like everything that goes into Charlotte these days kind of dies, so I don't really know what to say about that. But it isn't pretty, you know, as a wide receiver, there's only so much he can do with Bryce Young as his quarterback. I mean, Bryce Young is really struggling.
I said this last week when Andrew mentioned that you should drop Chuba Hubbard. If you have any Panthers player on your roster, cut bait. It is time, all right? Bryce Young is struggling to get 100 passing yards. It's not working. Adam Thielen is out there. He's getting open. I'd come back home, Adam. We miss you in Minnesota. That's all I'm saying. But it's not, if you have a Panthers player, I just cannot stress this enough. They are a detriment to your team. They are actively hurting you.
Yeah. Bryce Young has some of the worst decision-making skills that I've seen from a quarterback in a very long time. I mean, he cannot maneuver around in the pocket. I mean, he has a terrible passer rating. I mean, he's just trash.
Well, and I think Will Levis can be added to that list very soon. Like, he had that pass yesterday, the backwards lateral, what was he doing? He was already on the ground, and it was just going to be a fumble. Like, if you're going backwards.
He's had back-to-back weeks where it's just been, the picture of the week is just Will Levis doing something idiotic.
Yeah. I mean, this might be without saying, but is it fair to say that these 2 drops, they're both receivers, they arguably have the 2 worst quarterbacks in the league throwing to them? Is it fair to say that's why we should drop them?
Definitely for Deontay. Will Levis, I'm not ready to say he's one of the worst in the league.
Hold up. Both quarterbacks have only been playing for a year now. So
Will Levis much less. He started midway through last season.
Okay.
He didn't, and remember his debut with Hopkins was amazing. We saw that.
He destroyed Miami.
I will say this, if you are dropping receivers and you are still in need of one, I mentioned him last week and I want to mention him again, Alec Pierce. He is currently the wide receiver 2. All right, he scored a touchdown for the 2nd week in a row. He's averaging 19 points. He was less than 5% of rosters in ESPN League. He is now 13%. So you still have a chance to get him if you haven't picked him up yet. I cannot stress this enough. He is the guy in Indy. Get him now. Oh, before you miss it.
Michael Pittman.
You don't-
Fantasy owners are in shambles.
You don't often get second chances in fantasy to pick up a guy who has been getting weekly production.
Kathleen, do you have anyone else that you would add to this list? I know I have 2 in mind.
Like for drops?
Or ads.
Honestly, I want to circle back to Hunter Henry.
Okay,
I like really do not have a lot of faith in Hunter Henry. I mean, I think the tight end position is really hard to like find a good tight end because I mean, so often they're going back and forth between, you know, just covering the offensive line and then going between the slots. So they're super inconsistent. It's so hard. And Hunter Henry has the same problem, especially with Jacoby Brissett. I mean, it's not that I don't have faith in Hunter Henry. It's that I don't have faith in Jacoby Brissett being able to get the ball down the field
That's
to
fair.
him.
I will say that the Patriots have looked like the old Patriots, even though obviously Bill Belichick is out, but they still have a great defense. They still throw to pretty much solely their tight end. So yeah, they have looked the same. And the other people I would add to this list is Derek Carr and Rashid Shaheed.
Yes, Derek Carr, thank you.
You know, those Saints players, they are rostered in about 60% of leagues. Both
Not
of them.
Derek. Derek isn't.
Really?
In ESPN leagues, Derek Carr is I believe it's like, I have it here. It is, less than 10%.
Wow.
He's on less than 10% of rostered.
I
Derek Carr.
personally am going to go add him. I think you guys should too. And then lastly is the Bengals receiver, Andre Yoshivas or something. Jamar Chase has not been producing. He had 2 touchdowns yesterday against the Chiefs. Not to overreact about 2 touchdowns, but I think he might deserve a spot on this list, especially if he can get even 1 next week. But that is all the time we have for the segment. Thank you very much for coming on. And after this commercial, we will be jumping in to some UEFA Champions League. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, Hitting the Field family. My name is Andrew Montana, host of Season 19 of The Main Show. And on behalf of HTF, we hope you're enjoying today's content. But I'm here to tell you about everything else we have to offer here at the network. Mondays at noon, HTF Bets goes live with 3 of the best on-air faces we have in the program. Andrew Gregg's personality, Tyler Brownrick's sports expertise, and Nick Cohen's versatility make this show a fan favorite, but also a warm light to guide you through the harsh world that is the sports betting industry. On Tuesdays, Frankie Noble hosts a brand new show called Girls Got Game, blending women in sports, the biggest sports news stories, and creative segments that make for a fun and engaging show. Next up, we've got The Combine, an easygoing, conversational, and podcast-style show dropping on Wednesdays with Ty Patton as your host. No changes there. But a big change for The Combine is the set. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to The Combine from our brand new podcast studio. We've got the lights, we've got the cameras, all for Ty Patton to bring the action, and we hope you're just as excited as we are for this amazing opportunity. Much great content from The Combine this semester, as always. Then tune in Thursdays at noon for our second live show, The Main Show, hosted by, well, yours truly. Here we'll cover any sport, any topic, any story, no matter how obscure, be it basketball, football, hockey, soccer, UFC, MMA, cycling, even baseball. But be sure to tune in throughout the semester for our special shows, including drafts, debates, and much, much more. Lastly, Nighttime is aired on Fridays, where Patrick Previty and Matthew Bracker talk about UCF and college sports. From in-depth looks at campus's top storylines to collegiate records being broken nationwide, let Nighttime be your primary college sports resource. And outside of our 5-show roster, be sure to tune into our other content, such as the Studio Days vlog run by Vlog King Nick Cohen, breaking news graphics on our Instagram page, and much more. As well, make sure you're subscribed to Hitting the Field Network on YouTube, as well as following us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. But as for me, I've been Andrew Montana. Thank you so much for watching, and back to your regularly scheduled programming.
And welcome back. Now Andrew's joining me at the desk.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And then over there to talk about UEFA Champions League is Edgar. How are you doing, my friend?
Very good. How are you guys?
Doing all right. Thank you. We're going to start with you first. So who is winning the Champions League?
Well, as much as it hurts me to say it, I know Ezra Hines, former Bets host, will love to hear that I think Manchester City are going to take the Champions League this year. Now, Real Madrid won it last season. Man City, they actually took the title off of Man City, but this year I just think with the added games, with the bigger squad that City have, of course, adding Gundogan and Savinho, who have, meshed perfectly with this team, I think Man City have an upper hand. And also they have Erling Haaland, who, if you have a guy who's scoring 9 out of the 11 league goals you have so far this season, I just can't look past it. They look dominant as always. And, Pep is going to want to win another Champions League. That was a thing that always, hung over him. He had never done it if it wasn't at Barcelona. So, look, I just think Man City are in pole position to take the Champions League once again.
Okay. And Tyler, before you get into your pick, there's a new format around the league, right?
Yes, the Champions League is no longer in its group stages in the past. There was no group draw. Now it's one big super league almost.
Pretty much,
that
yeah.
that was rumored a few years ago to maybe like finally happen, but they just made that the Champions League. So instead of the standard group stages and the draws, it'll be, I believe, once a month. They'll play a game, and then it's a point table, and then the top 8 automatically make it to the round of 16, and then there's a playoff for, I believe it's team for the next like 16 teams to be the other 8 in the round of 16.
Correct.
And it might be a new league, but Real Madrid is still the greatest Champions League team we have ever seen. They have won the Champions League 15 times. There is no team better in Europe, all right? Now, they may be a bit of a slow start this year. They've had some injuries. Jude Bellingham is out. Brahim Diaz, another injury out, and there are other players, but those are their 2 biggest ones. But we cannot talk about Real Madrid without mentioning how Kylian Mbappe is now on this team. He has been a huge addition. Their offensive and goal-scoring potential is now through the roof. With Mbappe, Vinny Jr., Rodrigo, you still have Modric on that team, a veteran who has a lot of experience in the Champions League. Even now it's this new format. They have been here before. They know what is expected of them and what they need to do to get over the hump to win the Champions League. They're an experienced team. Their least experienced Champions League player is Kylian Mbappe. He is the one that hasn't had the level of success as his teammates have had. But now he's at Real Madrid. Now he'll finally get those opportunities. And not to mention, they're the reigning champs. They beat Dortmund last year in the final. And yet they're not the favorite. They're the second favorite at plus 300. But Real, they will, come time to play in the Champions League, they will be there. They will be ready, injuries or not.
Obviously, Kylian Mbappe going there is quite the addition, but I did see Edgar shaking his head a little bit. Why do you disagree?
Look, you know, Real Madrid have been in this position before. They put a team together of Galacticos, right, back in the early 2000s. And it falls short of expectations. Look, Mbappe, Vinny, Rodrigo, yes, it looks great on paper, but they have to work together. They have to know, that chemistry. They have to develop it. And so far in La Liga, I haven't really seen that. They're already 4 points behind Barca. Of course, it's a young La Liga season. Barcelona, by the way, which we will get to, perfect in La Liga. That is, pretty surprising. But I just think Manchester City are in a stronger position than Real Madrid, of course. They are the juggernaut in European football. But I think I agree with the odds there. City just ahead.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump into my pick. I did choose Leverkusen. They are 5th in Bundesliga and then second favorited in the Champions League, only the second favorited German team, only behind Bayern Munich. I don't know. This team is a bit of a dark horse. Their general manager is in his 2nd season. That's Xabi Alonso. Last season, they did go undefeated, only losing in the Europa Cup League final to Atalanta. But I do think a lot of the pressure is taken off of them this season because they've already lost a game. So expectations might be a little bit lowered. They are also running it back pretty much with the same roster. But it's a dark horse team, but, someone had to do it. I think they have a good shot,
I really do like your Leverkusen pick.
Good.
I think they were the feel-good story of last year. They dethroned Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga. It was a nearly decade-long reign Bayern had, and Leverkusen, seemingly out of nowhere, goes undefeated and finally takes down the behemoth of German football when we thought it would be Dortmund, but they kept falling short again and again, year in and year out.
Yeah. So, Andrew.
Yep.
Would you like to get into your team? Who did you choose?
I'd love to. So I chose Barcelona, and they're sitting at plus 1,400. I think it's good odds as a long shot just because of the fact that they've played 5 games in La Liga so far, and they've had 5 wins. Their goal differential is plus 13 currently, sitting at 17 goals for and only 4 against. I think that they're definitely one of the better teams at plus 1,000 or better odds, especially given the fact that their league play has been so strong. And the fact that they have so many good players on their team between Robert Lewandowski, who played at Bayern Munich for a while. We also have Rafinha on this team, Lamine Yamal coming off, one of the best Euros of all time for anybody under 18, the best Euros for anybody. under 18. They also have Koundé as their right back. So they have like a lot of big names on this team, and it doesn't surprise me that they're doing so well in La Liga. And I think that they can carry this over to the Champions League. It's definitely a bit of a long shot, but the fact that it's plus 1,400, I think that's way better odds than what it should be. They're probably going to get to at least the quarterfinal, I'd say.
Okay, so Edgar, our soccer expert, is there any reason why the third most favorited team, Arsenal, why we didn't choose them? Why do they not really stand a shot?
I'll say we, since I'm a diehard Arsenal fan. I think you guys know that already. Look, last season was our first season back in the Champions League, and at such a big, grand stage, it takes a while to get used to it again. Arsenal lost to Bayern in the knockouts last season. They got past Porto. It was tough, away at Bayern. We have that history against Bayern. It's not the best history, right? So look, this season it's gonna be. I feel like it's going to be a little bit of the same. Maybe semis is now the expectation, now that the squad has the experience now of one season. But I think you can look at Arsenal maybe in the coming 1 or 2 seasons as a true contender. But this season, I would calm down just a little bit.
That's good of you to say as a fan, at least. But
I'll stay humble. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's also just the fact that the top 2 teams are typically so dominant in the Champions League. It feels like it's been either Man City or Real Madrid for the last 3 or 4 seasons. It's literally between their semifinals match, and then obviously they've alternated winning in the last 2 years. But it feels like there's a clear difference between the top 2 in the Champions League and then the rest of the field.
Yeah, and just to recap some of the odds, Arsenal was at plus 800, Liverpool at plus 1,200, Bayern Munich at plus 1,200 as well, Barcelona at plus 1,400 as we mentioned, then PSG at plus 1,800, Inter Milan at plus 1,800, and then finishing it off with Leverkusen at plus 2,500. But that is all the time we have for this segment. After this, it will be our Surefire Pick of the Week, so don't go anywhere.
Jack, buddy, why are you here?
I don't really understand why I'm here. I got called a delusional fan. I just don't understand why I'm delusional if I think Kirk Cousins had the best mustache in the league.
Well, Jack, buddy, I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but I don't think anybody looks cool in handlebars.
But they're back, man. They're back.
They're not. They're not. Sometimes you just got to face the hard truth. It's right there in front of you. All these people, they're calling you delusional, but sometimes you got to worry about, am I projecting? Is it me? And in this
Let me
case,
tell you something, bud. It could never be me. Anything I say is factual and truth, and that's why the Vikings are going 16-1 this year.
Organization, you have to look at your roster and say, I've had Kirk O'Thuggins for 6 years. Maybe it's time to move on.
There is no moving on from Kirk Thuggins and Justin Jefferson.
Do you think that maybe this all started just because of a little disappointment?
Nothing has started. This is how I live, and I am not delusional.
And welcome back to our favorite part of the show.
Your favorite part of the show,
Our
maybe.
favorite part of the show. It's our Surefire Picks of the Week, just to go over some records. Mine did hit last week. I'm going to try and stay humble about it, but I am 2-0, and these guys are 0-2. But you know what? It's a new week. We can make that change. I could go to 3-0. Well, it's routine.
You got it.
I can go to 3-0. But we can get you guys on the win column. We can do that.
Segment. He's got to do it.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump right into mine for this week. I did have the Chargers and Panthers bet hit last week. Well, that was this week, but that was last show, and I do want to mention that I said the Raiders. That's my fault. It was still the same betting odds, so it was the Panthers game that hit. So I'm going for a second one in week 2 of the NFL season. This game is going to be tonight. Atlanta Falcons at Philadelphia Eagles at 8:15 p.m. I'm starting it off with our Eagles money line at minus 270. They're pretty heavily favored. Then Saquon Barkley, anytime touchdown. He did have 3 last game against the Packers in Brazil. And then we're going to spice it up a little bit, just make it a little tougher. I'm choosing for a Josh Sweat sack this game, okay? This is solely based off of when the Eagles played the Dolphins last season in primetime. Absolutely destroyed us. Not really, actually. It was kind of close until the end, but Josh Sweat had a monster game, and while he didn't record a sack against Green Bay, I think he might tonight. He might just be a primetime guy. If he gets a sack, I think the other two things are almost locks. So that's at plus 185, and the total parlay is at plus 591. Before we get into Andrew's parlay, any thoughts? Do we think I'm going 3-0? Do we think it's time for a loss?
The biggest thing is Josh Sweat getting a sack. Now Atlanta's O-line is not something spectacular, but there's so many names on this Eagles defensive line. Obviously, Jalen Carter or Jordan Davis, Josh Sweat. So it's like, who's going to be the one to get to the quarterback, and will Josh Sweat get it? Now I will say this: a half sack does not count.
No. You're completely right. It has to be a full one.
It has to be a full
So
sack.
that's another thing to watch out for. I like that you mentioned that. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, as I hope all of you do as well. Andrew, your game is also tonight.
My fingers are not crossed for your pick at all.
Okay, well that's fine.
I am praying on your downfall.
That's messed up. Just no one tail it yet, because if that starts to not hit, then it's your guys' fault.
Well, I'm confident in my pick. I definitely think my pick is going to hit this week. It should have hit last week. Christian McCaffrey was out, so the fact that the offense runs through them and then he just wasn't there was very unfortunate. I did not know that going in. One of my legs was literally Christian McCaffrey anytime touchdown.
Kyle Shanahan really
But for this week, I have between the Mets and the Nationals, I have the Mets sitting at minus 185. Then I have the over 8 at plus 100, and then I have Sean Manaea over 5.5 strikeouts. This isn't totally correlated because I need the pitcher to do well, and then I also need him to give up runs. But I do think that the Mets are in a playoff race between the Braves and just a lot of other teams in the NL wild card. They are close enough to maybe even take the division from the Phillies if they really drop off. But they need these games. They just came off losing to the Phillies a couple of times, so they need this game, and they can't be dropping games to the Nationals this late into the season. So I have the Mets money line, so just them to outright win, and then I also have Sean Manaea for over 5.5 strikeouts. He has been a strikeout machine this season and is averaging more than 1 strikeout an inning. So hopefully if he can make it 6 innings, this will hit. And then I also have them giving up over 8 runs.
Okay. All right. I like it, to be honest.
I appreciate that.
As always,
From
I'm
the
rooting for
guru
you.
himself.
Oh,
so.
well, let's not go that far. Okay. I need to get 3 before that. As always, I'm rooting for you.
Okay.
So, Tyler, you're going for college again, and you're going against your own team?
I am going against my Oklahoma Sooners. Listen, Big Vegas does not like me, apparently, all right? I'm 0-2, technically 0-3 with college football if you count the mock show where I picked FSU in that. So it's been brutal. So hopefully this will, the biggest thing is I want my Sooners to win, obviously. It's at Norman. So hopefully this reverse jinx, if I pick Tennessee money line, which I did at minus 280, that means the Sooners will win. And you know what? I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I'll be happy. But yes, I am going Tennessee money line. Tennessee is an outstanding football team. They're ranked number 6 in the nation. Nico, I'm not even going to try and say his last name.
Liava.
That has been outstanding to start the year for Tennessee. They just dropped 71 on Kent State. Now, the Sooners are a much better defense, which is why I'm going with the under for total points at 58.5. I know, OU, good defense, crazy. What times we live in. And that is at minus 110. And I will say this, even if OU doesn't win this game, I do think they will cover the spread. Spread's at 7.5 right now. Jackson Arnold in this offense. Jackson Arnold, he's still kind of figuring out, right? He's still getting used to being a starter in college football. But the potential is there. He's a dual threat quarterback. He's been outstanding. He's obviously not at the level of some Sooner greats in the past. But I think Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, but I think they will cover. This total parlay is sitting at plus 384. Hopefully the Sooners win, and my bad luck turns into good luck for them.
That's the only part of the parlay that I don't feel comfortable in. You're a Sooners fan. I think maybe.
Well, here's the thing: you never bet on your own team.
You've told me that.
That's bad luck.
So you're betting against
your team. Okay.
Okay,
got it.
Reverse
I
psychology.
can't lose.
That's
okay.
You know what?
Either my parlay hits or my team wins.
Or one of the other legs doesn't hit and your team still wins.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just saying. You could lose, but I hope you don't. I hope you win in either way. I hope you win, and I hope I win.
And I hope you lose.
Again, that's very nice. Thank you. But that is all the time we have for this segment. Thank you very much for tuning in again, and make sure to catch us next week for episode 4.
Episode 4.